You know, Lauren's the only reason this family stays together, Evelyn said, her voice sharp and certain as she passed the mashed potatoes across the table. I glanced up from my plate, biting back the retort forming on my lips. Across the table, Lauren flashed her perfect smile, basking in the praise like it was her birthright. Mom, that's not true, David said quietly, breaking the tension only slightly. Oh, David, Evelyn scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. You don't see it because you don't want to. Lauren's always the one keeping the peace, making sure we stay close. Natalie's fine, but she's not as involved. Her words stung, but they didn't surprise me. This had been the narrative for as long as I could remember. Lauren was the glue, the peacemaker, the family's shining star. And me? I was just the dutiful daughter-in-law, always fine, but never enough. My name is Natalie, and I've been married to David for 8 years. From the moment I joined his family, I knew I was stepping into a dynamic where I'd always be second best. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, adored her daughter Lauren with a ferocity that bordered on blindness. Lauren could do no wrong, and I was tolerated. It wasn't that I didn't try. I cooked meals, hosted family gatherings, and stepped in whenever there was a crisis. But no matter what I did, Evelyn's praise always found its way back to Lauren. If I cleaned up after a chaotic family dinner, Evelyn would thank Lauren for organizing the evening. If I resolved a last-minute problem, Evelyn would say, "That's just Lauren's influence, keeping everything in order." At first, I tried to win her approval. I thought if I worked hard enough, she'd see my worth. But as the years went on, I realized that Evelyn's biases weren't about me. They were about her own need to put Lauren on a pedestal. The dinner dragged on, with Evelyn's comments cutting deeper as the evening progressed. "Natalie's always so quiet," she said at one point, smiling at Lauren. "You're the one who brings the energy to this family." I smiled politely, my hands clenched under the table. David gave me a small, apologetic glance, but he didn't say much. He rarely did when it came to his mother's favoritism. By the time dessert was served, I'd retreated into my own thoughts. I didn't need Evelyn's validation, I reminded myself. I'd learned to find strength in my actions, not her words. Still, as I cleared the plates and watched Lauren laugh with Evelyn, a part of me couldn't help but wonder how long it would take for the truth to surface, for Evelyn to see who was really holding this family together. Later that night, as David and I drove home, the silence in the car was thick. He kept glancing at me, probably trying to gauge my mood, but I didn't give him much to work with. Finally, he broke the quiet. "I'm sorry about my mom," he said, his voice low. I let out a small laugh, shaking my head. "Why are you apologizing for something she does every time we see her?" "I don't know," he admitted, gripping the wheel tighter. "I guess I feel like I should say something, but I never know how to make it better." "David, it's not your fault," I said, though the words felt hollow. "Your mom has always made it clear who she thinks holds this family together, and it's not me. Nothing you say is going to change that." He frowned but didn't argue. That was the thing about David. He hated conflict, especially when it came to his mom. When we got home, I went straight to the kitchen and started putting away leftovers from the dinner I'd prepared before we left. Cooking had always been my way of unwinding, a small act of control in a world that often felt chaotic. David leaned against the doorway, watching me. "You know she doesn't mean it, right? She just gets caught up in her idea of Lauren." I turned to face him, the frustration bubbling to the surface. "It's not just about Lauren, David. It's about the fact that no matter what I do, your mom refuses to see it. I work hard for this family. I cook, I clean, I make sure we're all taken care of, and she acts like it doesn't even matter." David sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, Natalie. I see it, and I appreciate everything you do." "Then why don't you say something to her?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He hesitated, then shrugged. "Because I don't think she'll listen, and honestly, I don't want to start a fight that won't go anywhere." I shook my head, turning back to the counter. "It's fine," I said, though it was anything but. I don't need her approval. I'll just keep doing what I do, and eventually, the truth will speak for itself. As I cleaned up the kitchen that night, I thought about Evelyn's words and Lauren's smug smile. They didn't know half of what I did to keep this family afloat, financially, emotionally, and in every other way that mattered. But I wasn't going to waste my energy trying to prove it to them. Sooner or later, life would show them the truth. And when it did, I would be ready. A few weeks later, the cracks in the family's facade began to show. It started subtly, Evelyn mentioning how money seemed tighter than usual, Lauren complaining about a canceled spa trip. At first, I thought it was just normal ups and downs, but soon it became clear that something more serious was going on. One evening, David came home looking more stressed than I'd seen him in years. He dropped his bag by the door and sat heavily at the kitchen table. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting across from him. "It's my mom," he said, rubbing his temples. "She called today, asking if we could lend her some money. Apparently, Lauren borrowed a significant amount from her, and now she's struggling to cover her bills." I blinked, stunned. "Wait, Lauren borrowed money? For what?" He sighed. "Something about helping a friend start a business. It didn't work out, and now my mom's footing the bill." The revelation didn't surprise me. Lauren had always been impulsive, leaping into ventures without thinking them through, confident that someone else would clean up the mess. Usually that someone was Evelyn, who never hesitated to come to Lauren's rescue. "What did you tell her?" I asked. "I told her we'd think about it," David replied. "But Natalie, I know we can't just hand over money like that. Things are tight for us, too." I nodded, already mentally calculating our budget. Between the mortgage, groceries, and the small savings we were trying to build, there wasn't much room for generosity. Over the next few days, Evelyn's requests became more frequent and urgent. She called David almost daily, her tone growing more desperate each time. "David, you know how much I've done for this family," she said during one call, her voice trembling. "If you and Natalie could just help out this once, it would mean so much." David relayed the conversations to me, clearly torn between wanting to help his mom and knowing we couldn't afford to. "What do you think we should do?" he asked one night as we lay in bed. I stared at the ceiling, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "We can't give her money, David. Not when we're barely managing ourselves. But maybe there's another way to help." "What do you mean?" "I mean," I said slowly, "we step in and start handling things, quietly. If Evelyn's too proud to admit she's overwhelmed and Lauren's not stepping up, then maybe it's time someone else does." He frowned but didn't argue. "If anyone can figure it out, it's you," he said. As I lay awake that night, I began formulating a plan. Evelyn's blind faith in Lauren had led her to this mess, but I wasn't going to let her spiral further into trouble. Not for her sake, but for the family's. It was time to take action, even if it meant staying in the shadows. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and a calculator, poring over every detail of our finances. If I was going to step in, I needed to know exactly what we could spare, if anything. David sat across from me, sipping his coffee. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, watching me flip through bank statements. "I'm not going to hand your mom cash," I said firmly, "but if we can restructure some of her bills or find a way to reduce her expenses, it might help. She's in this mess because she won't admit she's struggling, and Lauren isn't going to do anything about it." David sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I hate that it's come to this. She shouldn't have to rely on you." "She doesn't have to," I replied, glancing up at him. "But someone needs to fix this before it gets worse." I started by contacting a financial consultant I knew from work. Over the next few days, I gathered information about Evelyn's debts, her monthly expenses, and the loans she'd taken on for Lauren's failed business ventures. The picture that emerged wasn't pretty. Credit card balances maxed out, overdue utility bills, and a looming mortgage payment she couldn't cover. Through it all, Evelyn remained oblivious to my involvement. I didn't tell her about the hours I spent negotiating lower interest rates on her loans, or finding payment plans that wouldn't drown her further in debt. David offered to talk to her, but I told him not to. She won't take it seriously if it comes from you, I said. And if she finds out I'm involved, she'll reject the help out of pride. He didn't argue, but I could see the guilt in his eyes. Meanwhile, Lauren remained conspicuously absent. Evelyn continued to sing her praises at family gatherings, saying things like, "Lauren's so stressed these days. She's doing so much for everyone." I bit my tongue every time, knowing full well that Lauren wasn't lifting a finger to fix the mess she'd created. The weight of it all was exhausting. Between managing our household, handling Evelyn's financial crisis, and keeping up appearances at family dinners, I felt like I was juggling 1,000 plates. But I refused to let it show. Evelyn didn't need to know how hard I was working to keep her afloat, and Lauren certainly didn't deserve the satisfaction of knowing I was cleaning up after her. One night, as David and I sat on the couch after another long day, he turned to me and said, "You're incredible, you know that?" I smiled faintly, too tired to argue. "Let's just hope it works," I said. "It will," he replied, squeezing my hand. "Because you're the one holding everything together, even if no one else sees it yet." 2 weeks later, I started to see the results of my work. Evelyn's overdue bills were now manageable, her mortgage payments had been adjusted, and her interest rates were significantly lower. The changes weren't monumental, but they were enough to keep her afloat. Despite the progress, Evelyn's praise for Lauren remained constant. "Lauren's been such a rock for me," she said one evening over dinner. "She always knows just what to say to keep me calm." I clenched my jaw, forcing a tight smile. "That's great, Evelyn. I'm glad she's been there for you." David gave me a sympathetic look, but he stayed quiet. It wasn't worth starting a fight, not when Evelyn was so blinded by her perception of Lauren. The final straw came when I overheard a phone call between Evelyn and Lauren. I'd stopped by Evelyn's house to drop off some paperwork related to her new payment plans. As I walked up the driveway, I heard her voice through the open window. "Don't worry about it, Lauren," she said, her tone warm and reassuring. "I'll figure it out. You've already done so much for this family." I froze, my stomach twisting. Done so much? Lauren hadn't done a thing except create the financial mess I'd been working tirelessly to fix. When I knocked on the door, Evelyn greeted me with her usual strained politeness. "Natalie, what a surprise," she said, stepping aside to let me in. "I just wanted to drop these off," I said, handing her the folder. "They're the finalized payment schedules for your bills. Everything should be in order now." She glanced at the papers briefly, then set them aside without much acknowledgement. "Thank you," she said almost dismissively, "but you didn't have to go to so much trouble." "It wasn't any trouble," I replied evenly, though my chest ached at her indifference. As I drove home, the frustration boiled over. I'd spent weeks fixing Evelyn's finances, sacrificing my time and energy, all while she continued to heap credit on Lauren. David found me in the kitchen later that night, furiously scrubbing a pan. "What happened?" he asked. Concern etched across his face. "She doesn't even care," I said, my voice shaking. "I've done everything to help her, and all she can talk about is how amazing Lauren is." He sighed, wrapping his arms around me. "I'm sorry, Natalie. She'll see the truth eventually. People like Evelyn can't ignore the facts forever." I leaned into him, letting the tears I'd been holding back finally fall. "She'd better," I said quietly, "because I'm done letting her take me for granted." After that night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue with Evelyn or try to convince her of my worth. Instead, I would focus on finishing what I started. The truth would come out in its own time, and when it did, there would be no denying what I had done for this family. Over the next few weeks, I continued to manage Evelyn's finances, streamlining her payments and negotiating better terms with creditors. Every improvement I made strengthened her financial position, yet I remained in the shadows. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence became more glaring. She wasn't around for family dinners anymore, claiming she was too busy. Evelyn still spoke about her as though she were some kind of savior, but the cracks in her illusion were starting to show. One afternoon, I received a call from Richard, the financial consultant I'd enlisted to help Evelyn. Natalie, I've just finished reviewing Evelyn's account, he said. She's in a much better place now, but there's something you should know. What is it? I asked, my stomach tightening. Her daughter, Lauren, has been funneling money from Evelyn's account to cover her personal expenses. It's been going on for months. The air left my lungs. Are you sure? Positive, Richard replied. The transfers are small enough to fly under the radar, but they add up. Evelyn might not even realize it's happening. I thanked him and hung up, my mind racing. Lauren wasn't just neglecting her responsibilities. She was actively sabotaging Evelyn's finances. That evening, I told David what Richard had uncovered. His face darkened as I laid out the details. This has gone too far, he said. You've done everything to help my mom, and Lauren's just taking advantage of her. I know, I said, my voice steady. But this isn't about Lauren anymore. It's about Evelyn understanding who's really been there for her. What are you going to do? He asked. I met his gaze, a newfound determination in my chest. I'm going to make sure she sees the truth. The next day, I scheduled a family meeting. Evelyn was hesitant and Lauren was predictably late, but I didn't let it deter me. When we were all seated in Evelyn's living room, I handed her a folder containing the financial records Richard had compiled. What's this? She asked, flipping through the pages. It's the truth, I said, my voice calm but firm. Everything I've done to help you, and everything Lauren's been doing behind your back. Evelyn's eyes widened as she read, her hands trembling. Lauren immediately tried to dismiss it. Mom, you can't believe this. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad. But the evidence was irrefutable, and for the first time, Evelyn couldn't brush it aside. The silence in the room was deafening as Evelyn flipped through the documents. Her hands shook, her face pale, as the reality of the situation sank in. Lauren shifted uncomfortably in her chair, her usual confidence slipping. This can't be right, Evelyn stammered, though her voice lacked conviction. It is, I said firmly. For months, Lauren has been siphoning money from your accounts while you've been struggling to stay afloat. Meanwhile, I've been the one negotiating with creditors, managing your payments, and ensuring you didn't lose your home. Lauren shot to her feet, her voice shrill. Mom, this is ridiculous. Natalie's just trying to make me look bad because she's jealous of how close we are. I met her glare with calm resolve. This isn't about jealousy, Lauren. It's about the truth. And the truth is, you've been taking advantage of your mother while I've been cleaning up your mess. Evelyn's gaze darted between us, her expression a mix of disbelief and dawning realization. Lauren, she said finally, her voice trembling. Is this true? Lauren faltered, her bravado crumbling. I didn't mean for it to get out of hand, she muttered. I was going to pay it back. Pay it back with what? I countered, my tone sharp. Another failed scheme? Another excuse? For the first time, Evelyn didn't defend her daughter. She slumped back in her chair, the weight of her favoritism crashing down around her. How could you do this, Lauren? She whispered. I trusted you. I thought you were helping me. Lauren didn't respond. Instead, she grabbed her purse and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. The tension lingered, heavy and oppressive. Evelyn looked at me, tears welling in her eyes. Natalie, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything, I replied, my voice soft but resolute. I didn't do this for thanks or recognition. I did it because it was the right thing to do, for you, for the family. But you need to understand that your blind trust in Lauren nearly cost you everything. She nodded slowly, her tears spilling over. I was so wrong about you, she admitted. I've spent so much time praising Lauren that I didn't see what was right in front of me. You've been the one holding this family together all along. Hearing her say those words felt like a release. For years, I'd carried the weight of her dismissal, trying to prove my worth through actions instead of words. Now, finally, she saw me. Not as an afterthought, but as the person I truly was. David reached over and squeezed my hand. his eyes filled with pride. "You've done more for this family than anyone," he said, "and now they all know it." I smiled faintly, my heart lighter than it had been in years. The truth was out, and for the first time, I felt truly seen. The days following the confrontation were a whirlwind of emotions. Evelyn called several times, her tone softer and more thoughtful than I'd ever heard. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Part of me wanted to hold on to the distance I'd maintained for so long, but another part, the part that still cared, wanted to believe she was finally ready to change. One evening, Evelyn asked if we could meet for coffee. "I need to talk to you," she said. "I need to explain. Everything." David encouraged me to go. "She's trying, Natalie," he said. "This is the first time I've ever heard her admit she was wrong about anything." Reluctantly, I agreed. When I arrived at the cafe, Evelyn was already there, nervously stirring her tea. She looked older somehow, the weight of the last few weeks clearly taking a toll. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. I nodded, waiting for her to start. She took a deep breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't know how to make this right," she began, "but I need you to know how sorry I am. I've spent so many years putting Lauren on a pedestal, ignoring everyone else, especially you. I thought I was protecting the family by keeping us close, but all I did was push you away." Her words were raw, unpolished, and surprisingly honest. "I didn't expect you to forgive me," she continued, her voice breaking. "But I need you to know that I see you now, Natalie. Everything you've done for this family, it's more than I ever gave you credit for. I don't deserve your kindness, but I'm grateful for it." I sat in silence for a moment, letting her words sink in. "Evelyn," I said finally, "I didn't step in because I wanted gratitude or recognition. I did it because I care about this family, even when it hasn't always felt like I belonged. But hearing you say that, it means more than you know." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I don't want to be the person I've been," she said. "I want to do better, for you, for David, for everyone." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt genuine. And for the first time, I felt like we were on the same page, not as rivals or adversaries, but as two people who wanted the best for the family. Over the next few weeks, Evelyn made small but meaningful changes. She started taking a more active role in her own finances, attending workshops I recommended, and seeking advice from professionals. She also made a point to include me in family conversations, asking for my input, and genuinely listening to what I had to say. Lauren, meanwhile, kept her distance. The fallout from the confrontation had shaken her, and while I didn't expect an apology from her anytime soon, her absence gave the rest of us room to rebuild. For the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't just a guest in my own family. I was a part of it. Over time, the family began to feel less fractured. Evelyn's effort to change wasn't perfect, but it was consistent. She checked in with me regularly, sought my advice on matters she would have once dismissed me from, and even began expressing gratitude for the things I did, something I never thought I'd hear from her. One afternoon, as we sat in her living room reviewing her updated financial plans, she looked up from the papers and said, "I don't think I ever thanked you properly, Natalie. You didn't have to do any of this, but you did, and it saved me." I paused, surprised by the sincerity in her voice. "You don't have to thank me, Evelyn," I said carefully. "I just wanted to make sure the family didn't fall apart." She shook her head. "It's more than that. You've been the foundation of this family for years, and I was too blind to see it. That's on me. But I see it now, and I'll never take that for granted again." Her words settled something deep inside me. For years, I'd silently carried the burden of her dismissal, wondering if I would ever be enough in her eyes. Now, for the first time, I felt seen, not for what I could do, but for who I was. Meanwhile, Lauren's absence created space for healthier family dynamics. Without her constant need for attention and Evelyn's unquestioning support, conversations became more balanced. David noticed the change too. It's nice to come over and not feel like we're walking on eggshells, he said one evening, as we drove home from dinner at Evelyn's house. It is, I agreed, though I knew it was more than just Lauren's absence. Evelyn's efforts to repair our relationship had brought a sense of calm to the family that I hadn't realized we'd been missing. At work, I found myself reinvigorated. The challenges I'd faced with Evelyn had taught me more than I expected about patience, resilience, and the power of staying true to my values. Those lessons spilled over into my professional life, giving me a renewed sense of purpose. One day, as I was wrapping up a meeting, Evelyn called. "I'm thinking about hosting a family dinner," she said, her tone hopeful. "It's been a while since we all sat down together, and I'd like to make it special. Would you help me plan it?" Her request was simple, but it carried so much weight. "Of course," I said, smiling. "I'd love to." As I hung up, I felt a warmth I hadn't associated with Evelyn in years. She wasn't perfect, and our relationship wasn't magically fixed, but it was moving in the right direction. And for the first time, I felt like I had a place at the table, not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. The family dinner Evelyn planned was unlike any we'd had before. There was a lightness to the atmosphere, a warmth that hadn't existed in years. The dining table was set with care, the food thoughtfully prepared, and the conversation flowed naturally. For once, there was no tension, no subtle digs or favoritism overshadowing the evening. Midway through the meal, Evelyn raised her glass. "I just want to say something," she began, her voice steady but emotional. Everyone fell silent, the clinking of forks and knives stopping as we turned to her. "For years I've seen this family through one lens, one that wasn't always fair," she said. Her gaze shifted to me, and for a moment it felt like we were the only two people in the room. "Natalie, I owe you an apology. I didn't recognize everything you've done for us, for me. But I see it now. You're the reason this family is still standing, and I'll never forget that." A lump formed in my throat, but I managed a small smile. "Thank you, Evelyn," I said softly, my voice wavering. "That means a lot." David squeezed my hand under the table, his pride evident in the way he looked at me. After dinner, as the guests began to leave, Evelyn pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, her tone earnest. "About Lauren, about me. I let her take advantage of me because it was easier than admitting I'd made mistakes. But I won't let that happen again." Hearing her acknowledge the pattern was more than I'd hoped for. "It's not easy to break old habits," I said gently. "But you're trying, and that's what matters." She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You've taught me more than I can put into words, Natalie. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't have to repay me," I replied. "Just keep moving forward. That's all I need." That night, as David and I drove home, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The journey with Evelyn hadn't been easy, and there was still work to be done, but we were in a better place, one built on mutual respect and understanding. For so long, I'd sought validation from her, believing that my worth depended on her approval. But now, I realized that I didn't need her to see me to know my own value. Evelyn's recognition was a bonus, not the foundation. As I lay in bed that night, I reflected on everything we'd been through. I wasn't just the daughter-in-law anymore. I was a vital part of this family, not because of what I'd done, but because of who I was. And that, I realized, was enough.